Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a first look at the new RT6600AX tri-band Wi-Fi 6 router from Synology. Now I want to thank Synology for sending me this device to look at, test, and review. What we're going to do today is take a closer look at the device itself. We'll go to the website, take a look at some of the features, and then we'll get it set up. We'll go through the setup wizard and we'll take a look around the UI. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then stick around. Okay, we're going to take a closer look. I'm not going to do an actual unboxing. I do want to mention that Synology did include the power brick and an Ethernet cable inside the box, which is really cool. But the main focus is the actual RT6600AX itself. The Synology branding is right across the top in the center. We have the status lights along the front. Plenty of venting. We have 6 antennas, 4 of which are for the 5 gigahertz band, 2 are for the 2.4 gig band. Really, the form factor is pretty cool. It's pretty sleek looking. It really doesn't bother me whatsoever. It's actually got a pretty nice form factor. We have the model number on the front right here. More venting on the front. More venting on the side here. On this side here, we have more venting. We do have the Wi-Fi button and the WPS button, which the WPS is a nice feature for a home residential router situation. On the bottom, plenty of more venting, and we have options for mounting on a wall as well as the 4 rubber feet for mounting on a desk. Now, to get to the back of the router, on the rear of the device, it starts on my left, your right, with a USB 3.2 port. You could use this port to attach an external USB device for storage purposes, backup purposes such as time machine backup. You can attach a printer to it so you can share a printer over the network. You can also tether a smartphone for internet access as well. Right next to that is a dedicated 1 gig WAN port. That's the blue port. Then you have your 4 ports here, your yellow ports. This is your switch. Ports 2, 3, and 4 are your 1 gig LAN ports. Port 1 is configurable as a 2.5 WAN or LAN port, which is really, really cool. And we're going to demonstrate that later on in the actual video. Moving over here, you probably can't see it too well, but that's an on-off switch. There's your reset switch, and then there's your power port. So there's a look at the actual router itself. Again, I don't mind the form factor. It's actually pretty streamlined. I think it's a pretty common design for a home-based router. So let's start off by taking a look at some of the features. The router was recently released and it's got a retail price of $299 US. It's a full tri-band Wi-Fi 6 router. It has a quad-core 1.8 gigahertz processor. It has support for the new 5.9 gigahertz band, so you get 2 5 gig bands and the 1 2.4 band. And if you take a look over at the chart on the right, you can see we not only have additional channels in the 160 megahertz range, but in the 20, 40, and 80 as well. It does have a 2.5 gig port, which is configurable for either WAN or LAN, and it does have support for dual WAN as well, failover and load balancing. And we'll take a look at this port closer when we get into the actual video and the live demo. It's powered by Synology's Router Manager 1.3, and that's the latest and greatest version. It can support up to 5 networks and 15 SSIDs. It has complete network segmentation, and it does support VLANs. Now, one of the other cool and exciting features, as well as being robust, is the parental controls. Now, we're not going to take a look too much at the parental controls in this video. I think I'm going to save that for a separate video. Looking at this diagram here, you can see that you can have more than one of the 6600s, so it can form a mesh network. So it can be either router mode or AP mode, which is really, really cool if you have a larger home or a larger small business area. And finally, you can stay in control from anywhere with management on the go, support for iOS and Android. For those of you that are interested in taking a look at the actual hardware specs, we'll briefly look at those, and then I want to get on to the actual setup and look around the UI. So as we mentioned earlier, it's got the quad-core 1.8 processor. It's got 1 gig of DDR3 memory. Here are the antenna types. You have 4x4 MIMO in 1.5 gigahertz band, and you have 2x2 MIMO omnidirectional in the 2.4 and the other 5 gig band. The LAN ports we took a look at already when we took a closer look at the actual device itself. And if you're interested in the advertised throughput, in the 1.5 gigahertz band, you have up to 4,800 megabits per second. In the second 5 gigahertz band, you have up to 1,200 megabits per second. In the 2.4 band, you have up to 600 megabits per second. So that said, let me get this router connected so that we can go through the setup wizard and take a look at the UI. Okay, so I have the router plugged in, it's fired up. I have my computer plugged into the second LAN port, and I'm just connecting to the 1 gig WAN port off of a switch of my existing network. You can see the router page is up on the screen. I found it by just opening up a browser and typing router.synology.com, or you could use the default IP address, which is 192.168.1.1. and you'll be brought to the same point as you see here. Now, it automatically assigned a DHCP address to my computer, which is really, really cool. I didn't have to go into my network settings and do anything. You can also set up this router using the mobile app, but we're going to go through the computer now so that you can actually see what I'm doing. So let's go ahead and click on Start. And the first thing we're going to do is set up the administrator account. So we're going to give it a username and a password. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I suggest that you use a stronger password if you're doing this in true production. For now, we're just going to go ahead and say I have read and accepted the end user license agreement and click Next. Now it's asking us to set up the Wi-Fi network. So I'm just going to call this Synology Wi-Fi 6. And again, I'm just going to give it a simple password of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, please use a stronger password in production. Let's go ahead and click on Next. And now we have to choose the operation mode. So as I mentioned earlier when we were going through the features, this router can function in router mode or, as you see here, in AP mode. So in router mode, you see it says here, the Synology router's WAN port connects to the internet via a DSL cable modem. And if we switch over to the other mode, which is the wireless AP, it's bridge mode. All network interfaces are bridged together and connect to the internet via another router. So basically you could mesh this together with another 6600. We're just going to leave it set to router mode for now. And we're going to go ahead and click on Next. And now we're going to set up our internet connection. So we're going to leave it set to auto IP, but I want to show you the other choices. We have PPPoE, we have manual IP, auto IP, which is getting an address via DHCP from the provider. And then there's also DS Lite, which I don't know too much about DS Lite other than the fact that it stands for the IP version 6 dual stack Lite. And it has something to do with allowing the ISPs to be able to begin to transition over to IP version 6 while still handling IP version 4 addresses. Again, I'm not going to get in too much into detail on that because number one, it's not the focus of this video. And number two, it's pretty much above my pay grade. So that said, let's go ahead and leave it set to auto IP. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on Apply. Now we're getting the confirmation that the router is being set up. It should be ready in roughly 3 minutes. Do not shut down the system during this setup. Okay, so the device is back. Let's go ahead and get signed in using the credentials that we created earlier during the setup wizard. And here you can see we have two options. We can either manage the router now, or we could add additional Wi-Fi points if we needed to expand the Wi-Fi coverage. We're just going to go ahead and click on Start Managing Now. Okay, so we have the Welcome to DSM screen, and we're just going to toggle through this. You can see up in the left-hand corner of the screen here, it's being highlighted as we go through. So using these two modules, we can configure the network, the Wi-Fi, the SSIDs, VLANs, etc. Now, the next to highlight is the safe access and threat prevention. We're going to talk about that more in a separate video. And then finally, we have management on the go, and there are apps available for the iOS device and Android as well. So let's go ahead and click OK. and it's asking if we want to send our analytics to Synology, and I am going to just go ahead and say no thanks for now. And then here it's reminding us to keep the Synology router updated, and also suggesting we register for a Synology account to get an e-newsletter. I'm just going to close this for now and not worry about that. So that said, looking at this device, if you're familiar with the Synology NAS devices, then this interface is going to look extremely similar to you. In the upper right-hand corner, you have your notifications, you have your user information, your search. Up in the left-hand side, you have your main menu link. You can see here all the options that have been installed off by default. And then here we have Notification Center, Wi-Fi Connect, Safe Access, Control Panel, and the Package Center, and then SRM Help. Again, this router is running the latest version of SRM, version 1.3. Let's go ahead and start off with, now we're not going to go through all of these today. Again, I want to save a couple of things for future videos, otherwise this video will be way too long. But let's start off today with looking at the control panel, and we're just going to browse around and see what it has to offer. So in the control panel, it's a very familiar looking control panel. We have our user information. Under advanced, we have our password settings. There's two-step verification, which is excellent. We can enable the home folder, but we don't have a storage space set up yet. That's that USB 3.2 drive. We could connect a drive to that, and then we would be able to set up storage. We could link it to a domain. We could set up an LDAP client. Here under the storage tab, again, without the storage device attached to the back of the router, we can't create things like shared folders or manage the storage or anything like that, but it is available if we do connect the device. Under the file services, you can see it supports Windows file service, Mac file service, and as well as enable Bonjour printer broadcast. It also supports FTP and WebDAV. Under the general services, it has SSH service, which is off by default, SNMP and NTP service as well. Under notifications, you have email, SMS, push device, advanced. Under device, you have all basic information about the device. You can control the LEDs. You could actually add a network printer to share through the router, and then you could set a reboot schedule. And under system, you have your typical Synology update and restore, checking for the latest SRM, and you can see it's up to date as of this video. System database settings, SRM settings, you can name the router. Here's the HTTP and the HTTPS ports, and here's automatically redirect HTTP connections to HTTPS. We're going to go ahead and apply that and say OK. Then you have other things. Okay, we have to log back in since oh no, we didn't have to log back in. Okay, so now, again, let's go back to the control panel. It kind of bounced us out there. So let's go back to here. On the regional options, I think that's where we left off. Let's go ahead and set the time. Eastern Standard Time is where I'm located. I'll just leave the server address as pool.ntp.org, the time zone server. That's fine. We'll go ahead and click OK for that. This time it did not bounce us out. We have different options for login, and then we have the ability to sign the device into our Synology account if we already have one, or to create one if we don't. So that's a quick look at the control panel. Lots of options to play with and configure. Let's look at the network center next. Under the network center, you could see here we have a connected status. Now, right now, I just have the WAN port connected to one of my existing network switches. We're getting an address via DHCP. If we come down to the port status here, you can see that I'm connected to the 1 gig WAN port. I'm not connected to the 2.5 gig port that, as you see here, but we're going to play with that in a second. And you can see I have my computer connected here to the 1 gig port number 2. Now, that said, looking at the local network, we'll come back to internet for a second. Looking at the local network, by default, it's set up 192.168.1.1/24. If we go ahead and edit, click on edit that network, you can see the network information here. You can see it has enabled network isolation by default. And it says here, the communication between this network and other local networks will be blocked. And that's good, I guess, for someone who doesn't want to mess around with firewalls and you have a very basic network. But if you have multiple VLANs on your network and you want to be able to, let's say, access an IoT network, for example, or a camera network, for example, from the main network, with this checked, it's going to not allow that kind of access. So I'm going to uncheck that for now, and we can take care of segmenting the network using the actual firewall rules, and we'll do that again. We'll separate that into another video, but for now, we'll go ahead and apply that. Okay, great. Let's go back into edit. Under Ethernet port, you can see here all the ports are selected. Note it says primary network. Port number 2 is non-assignable. That basically means that it's to ensure access to the Synology router. Under Ethernet port, you can actually assign a specific port to a specific network. And we can, again, we'll talk about that in another video, but we can actually just assign, let's say, port 3 to VLAN 10, which could be, let's say, a camera network. And then if you attach, let's say, a switch to port 3, it'll send all that traffic over VLAN 10 to that switch, and you can have your little virtual network working that way. But for now, we're just going to leave this as is. Here's the Wi-Fi that we created. We have the option of editing the Wi-Fi from this point. Here's our IP version 4 DHCP server, and we can go in and we could set the parameters here. And then let's see what else we have here. You have information about IPTV and VoIP. A lot of configuration. DHCP client, you could do DHCP address reservations, which is really cool. And you have the ability to create static routes. So that's under local network. Now let's go back up to port forwarding for a second. Here's your port forwarding information. You have port forwarding, port triggering, DMZ, and NAT pass-through. Under port forwarding, if you create a port forwarding rule, you could put in the private address of the server you want to port forward to. You put in your public port, the port you want to forward to, and then the protocol. Pretty straightforward. And a nice thing, if you click on the drop-down menu, it has some predefined port forwarding options. For example, if you wanted to port forward FTP to a particular device, all you have to do is fill in the private IP address. The rest of the information is already selected for you. So that was really cool of Synology to do that, just kind of keeping it simple for the home user. And I like that. So we're just going to go leave here without any changes. Let's go up to the internet. Okay, so here you can see under connection, excuse me, the primary interface is the 1 gig interface. The connection type is to detect automatically, and it's right now it's set as the default gateway. Here we can, under secondary interface LAN 1, we could take that LAN 1 port. That's the configurable port, the 2.5 configurable WAN LAN port. Under this tab here, we can configure that to be our WAN port. So let's go ahead and let's enable it. I'm going to leave the connection type to auto because I'm just going to connect it to my network. And in fact, I'm going to connect it to a 10 gig switch and see if we actually get 2.5 as the connection status. And then we're going to set the gateway as enabled, but we're going to have to disable the other one. So let's disable the main gateway or the main WAN connection. So now we're about to enable our secondary WAN, and we're going to make it the default gateway. Let's go ahead and say apply. And while this is saving, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I'm just going to run behind and plug in the router to the 10 gig switch to the 2.5 WAN port, and we'll see what our connection status is. So I'll be right back. Okay, it does say changes applied here at the bottom. Now, let's go back over to the status. Okay, so we're connected now, and let's go down to the port status. And here you can see the 1 gig WAN port is connected, and here you can see the 2.5 gig WAN port is connected as well. And here we have a 1 gig connection, and that is my computer on the primary network port number 2. Okay, so that's awesome. Let's go back to the Internet tab. And now if we click over, you can see here that this default gateway is disabled for the primary interface. The secondary LAN or the secondary WAN, which is LAN 1, is set as the default gateway. If we click over to the Smart WAN tab, I want to show you this. Right now it's set as failover. And here you have LAN as the LAN 1, the 2.5 gig port as the main LAN. And here you have the 1 gig port as the backup WAN. But if you click on this little drop down here, you can see you could set it over to load balancing and failover. And then here you can weight it just very easily using this slider. You see here you can weight it 30% for the first LAN, for the main LAN, and 70% for the backup LAN, which I don't know why you would want to do that. It would be more the other way around like that. But you see how easy it is to go ahead and weight the dual WAN. So that's really, really cool. Let me drop this back over to failover, and you can see here you could also swap between the default gateway. Now I made the 1 gig port the default gateway and the 2.5 gig port the backup. Again, I don't know why you would do that, but Synology does give you that option. So that is really, really cool. Let's see what else. Here's our Quick Connect and DDNS tab for configuration of our Quick Connect account and ID. And if we wanted to set up dynamic DNS service, and then here is the mobile network tab, and you can actually tether a mobile cellular router or even a cell phone to that USB port and have a WAN connection that way as well. So I think that covers everything. Oh, wait, let me just look through here through the security tab. Yeah, so here you have some general security system settings. You have your logout timer, which you can set your threshold here. You have DOS protection. You can enable it by default. It's disabled. Here's where we would create our firewall rules. And again, we're going to take a look at the firewall rules and creating a couple of different networks in a separate video. Here's all the different services. You can see here that it's allowing DDNS and DDNS heartbeat through the firewall. And then here you have auto block. So you have login attempts within a certain amount of time. And again, that's a great feature. So that just about for this video covers what I wanted to cover in the network center. Let's look at Wi-Fi Connect real quick. And here under the status, you can see the Wi-Fi networks. You can see 5G1, 5G2, and the 2.4 band. We don't have any additional Wi-Fi points, just the built-in Wi-Fi that's in the router. And what I really like about this router is you actually can disable the Wi-Fi altogether and just use it as a straight router. And again, why would you want to do that? Probably wouldn't, but I'm in a situation a lot of times where I can't get the regular routers that I'm looking for to supply my customers. So in this case, with the supply chain being what it is, this might be an option for me, although I know it's not the most practical use of this router. That said, before I forget, on the side of the router, and I think I showed it earlier, there is a WPS button. So it does support WPS, so you can configure your clients using WPS for easy setup if you so wish. Let's click on the Wi-Fi settings. You can see here's the Wi-Fi network that we created earlier during the wizard, and it automatically created a guest network, but it left it off by default. So let's go ahead and click on edit and take a look at some of the settings. So under Smart Connect, with that on, what this does is it just combines all 3 bands into the one SSID name, and then it just lets the router decide which is the best one to select. So for example, it says here, this is a combination of the 2.4 and 5 gig networks. Auto selection is supported. Your Synology router will, come on, stop going away, automatically select an appropriate band to connect in some situations. So there's the SSID. You can determine whether you want it to broadcast or not broadcast, show or hide. There's your security levels, all your general information about setting up the Wi-Fi. You could set up a Wi-Fi schedule if you'd like. You could MAC filter. You could set up a MAC filter. Let's see. Let's create a new MAC filter and see what we get. That's really cool. So you can set up the filter and go through, and you could either filter by denial or by allowing, which is really, really cool. We're not going to complete that. I just wanted to see what that was. So that's a neat feature. And then we have a bunch of advanced options as well. So that's that. Let's look here under the radio tab. So here you can configure and tweak your Wi-Fi settings, which is really cool. Again, your MAC filter, where you can create the MAC filtering rule. And then here's your configuration for WPS, which is on by default. We did already talk about the control panel. Let's just take a look at the package center and see what they have to offer. And then here you can see what's installed already. Safe access is installed. And then let's look at the other packages that are available. You got your VPN Plus server. Again, I think I'll save that for a separate video. It's got a really, this router has a lot of VPN features, really cool features. So we'll go cover that in another video. It's got threat prevention, download station. It could be a DNS, internal DNS server, which is really, really cool. It could be a media server, and it can also be a radio server. So we're going to take a look at some of these as well in separate videos. So again, guys, there's a first look at this router. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I went through things quickly. Again, there was a lot to cover, and I want to keep this video to a certain length. So in any event, thank you for coming along for the ride. Okay, one last thing before we go, I would just like to go ahead and do a sample speed test connected to the Synology Wi-Fi 6 SSID that we created earlier. Now, I know the conditions aren't optimal. I have the regular house Wi-Fi right in this room. I have AV equipment and networking equipment and lighting all over the place, but we have to at least do one speed test just to kind of see what kind of speeds we're getting. I do have a 1 gig connection, so let's go ahead. Let me switch to my overhead cam and start the speed test and see where we're at. Okay, so we have almost 700 down. We got 695 down and 237 up. Again, the conditions are not optimal. I'm sure we could probably do a little bit better if we didn't have the existing Wi-Fi right up above here. I didn't do any tweaking to the SSID that we created on the Synology router, just left it as is right out of the box through the creation wizard. So I think that's pretty good. That's not a bad result. So there you go. There's the first look at the RT6600AX by Synology. I hope you liked this video and you learned at least one new thing about this router. I really do like this router. I think it's perfect for the residential setting and small businesses such as salons, boutiques, and small shops. I think it's priced right at $299. Even if you had to buy a second one to mesh them together, I think that's still fairly reasonable. So let me know what you think about this router. Put it down in the video comments below. If you like this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out some of my other videos that I have listed here up above. Please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video. And I want to thank you, as I do in every video, for using my Amazon affiliate links. I know they don't change your price, but they do help out the channel. Once again, my name is Tony with Quick Tech Solutions. As always, please stay safe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.